This section is on cyberspace and the World Wide Web. Cyberspace and the World Wide Web are arenas through which intense communications are enabled. Communities are developed by people based on affinity. Some are by people connected by blood relations, others professional or based on shared interests, including the epistemic. Information and ideas, including those found in books and journals, can be difficult to access in the African continent because of cyclical economic crises arising from Africa's participation in the world economy and the consequent adoption of structural adjustment programs in the latter part of the 20th century. Africa's marginalization is also revealed in its absence from participating in determining ways in which forms and models of gathering and disseminating knowledge are governed and managed. As more Africans become able not only to access the internet, but also to own companies and computers that operate through the internet capabilities, these interactions promise only to be richer. However, control over the production and governance of these technologies and the systems to manage them remain in the hands of actors, mostly in the global north. Without participation in agenda setting and governance, Africans are marginal and marginalized. This has symbolic and substantive effects. Centering Africa's often ignored strengths, I want to focus on the importance of proverbs as an example of what is possible and what remains relevant, despite the enduring effects of colonialism and imperialism. The centralism of aphorisms or proverbs to finding meanings is evident in Yoruba philosophies. They're used to discern deeper meanings, shapes my work on continuity and change in the formation and transformation of ideas. Used to interrogate the hashtag #EndSARS protests, it shows how cyberspace is used for organizing, building community, mobilization, information dissemination, fundraising, protests, memorialization, and advocacy. Conceptually, Sorosoke, to speak up, to speak the truth, to speak clearly, to speak truth to power, is an old Yoruba idea to which I would pay more attention later. So how does cyberspace shape, limit, extend, and affect the possibilities of democracy, citizenship, and identity? What I'll do here is to explore the dimensions of globalization and consequent effects on African youths within the global political economy. Questions of international migration or hashtag Japa are examined as having significant import for matters of individual, community, state, and global security. The goal is to expose the fault lines of globalization, post-coloniality, postmodernity, democratization, and economic growth, as well as the intersections, and the effects on the youths and their protest politics in Nigeria. So, the conceptual framework that I use is heterodox. It's intentionally reflexive, post-structuralist, and post-colonial. I am looking at the quotidian or everyday manifestations of bounded choices that people make and their effects in shaping the lives of the youth, as well as determining the limits of the possible for them. Of course, youth have agency, but their agency is not unlimited. Historical and contemporary structural constraints from social, state, regional, and global systems provide or deny opportunities in ways that affect youths and other populations. Nonetheless, there is evidence of youth agency and its effects on social, economic, and political structures and the institutions that govern them. So let me speak a little bit about this reflexive, interdisciplinary, and post-colonial inquiry that I'm trying to do here. I engage in interdisciplinary inquiry, and I seek to contribute to the attempts to consider the lessons learned, the roads traveled, and opportunities either embraced or missed in contemporary Nigeria. Scholarly consensus rightly indicate that Africa and its peoples face formidable economic, political, and social challenges. In my teaching and research and scholarship, I take a longer-term perspective on Africa and its place in world politics. Being interested in how globalization, post-colonialism, internationalization, and post-modernity constrain or enable African states and peoples to participate effectively in the world political economy, I explore the extent to which the weakening of the state and hierarchical relationships have expanded or constrained opportunities for the youth to voice their demands for reform on state and society in contemporary Nigeria. This is the real context of the crisis that triggered the Sorosoke resistance. This reflexive analysis that I'm doing derives from my social context. In my personal life, I am profoundly influenced by Yoruba philosophy and its effects on my identity, social relations, and research. Yoruba philosophies can be apprehended through proverbs or aphorisms that frame, construct, and deconstruct the meanings of words and other communications. The Yoruba are transnational. There are approximately 42 million people in Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and a few 100,000 in the African diaspora. The word Sorosoke is Yoruba. It can be applied to both private and public conversation. It can be a gentle exhortation or a peremptory command that means speak up, be loud, agitate, protest loudly. The hashtag EndSARS youth protesters named what they were doing Sorosoke, and they dubbed the older generation Benudake, or keep quiet, the silent ones, quiet ones, the mute ones. This generation of youth have moved away from Fagburu to Japa in characterizing survival strategies associated with or employed during migration. Sorosoke is about speaking one's truth. It's about being bold. It's about being courageous, about daring to speak truth to power, about telling one's story. For the hashtag EndSARS protesters, the story they were telling was a generational one that drew on their understanding of the world that they live in, their experiences in that world, and their resistance to being oppressed, brutalized, marginalized, and tormented by the state and its agents. They saw and experienced the SARS unit acting in predatory and violent ways, predominantly towards people of their generation. And they saw apathy and resignation on the part of the older generation. This was unacceptable to them, and they saw it as counterproductive. So, Sorosoke was articulated to speak about the outspokenness and pushback of the younger generation, and Gbenu was articulated to capture the silence of the older generation in the face of blatant abuse of power and impunity on the part of the state. Sorosoke is an indictment of the older generation and an accusation that they are complicit in the matter of state impunity and violence by virtue of their silence. Within the Yoruba worldview, Gbenu not only means being silent, it implies cowardice and refusal to speak truth to power. It's a refusal to get involved, a sitting on the fence, and an abdication of responsibility. It is important to acknowledge the self-naming by the EndSARS protesters as affirming their socio-political stance and approaches to voicing their demands. But really, they are not the first to do this. Previous generations of youths also have used similar strategies, and they have distinguished themselves from older generations. To affirm and conclude that the hashtag EndSARS youths are doing something never before seen by self-naming and using cutting-edge technological tools is problematic. It is also historical and disingenuous. So this is the end of the fourth part, and we'll continue the fifth part of this long presentation by talking about the Yorubas and how one can see the youth protests in global context. Thank you.